Robert Maudsley was born on the 26th of June 1953 in Liverpool as the fourth child of his parents. Sadly, they neglected their young children, resulting in Robert and his siblings, Paul, Kevin and Brenda, being taken into care. They spent a significant portion of their early lives in Nazareth House, a Catholic home for children overseen by nuns. Robert and his brothers formed a strong bond during their time in the home. It is evident that Robert found this period to be quite pleasant, which is understandable considering the difficult experiences they would later endure at the hands of their parents. In fact, Robert and his siblings hardly knew their parents at all. They rarely visited them or had much contact. His brothers had some vague memories of their parents, whereas Robert had been too young and didn't know them at all. After spending most of his life in the home, Robert had developed a strong bond with the nuns. They had become more than just caretakers to him. They felt like family. Since he and his siblings had been at the home since they were infants, they had stuck together and found comfort in their shared experiences. Overall, they were content with their situation. But when Robert was 8 years old, his parents decided to remove him and his siblings from care. In his own words, he endured severe physical and mental abuse at their hands. The parents went on to have 8 additional children, and all the siblings were crammed together in a small home. They were forced by their parents to steal, and if they were caught, they would be beaten. It was something they'd never experienced before. He said they just picked on us one by one, gave us a beating and sent us off to our room. For some reason, Robert bore the brunt of the abuse, stating, "All I remember of my childhood is the beatings. Once I was locked in a room for 6 months, and my father only opened the door to come in and beat me 4 or 6 times a day. He used to hit me with sticks or rods, and once he bust an air rifle over my back." After some time, social services intervened, and Robert, along with some of his siblings, were placed in the care of foster families. Throughout these years, they had to constantly adjust to different households. To the surprise of his relatives, Robert's father had reportedly informed them that Robert had passed away. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, the care system in the UK permitted children who were 16 or older to leave the home they were living in, and were no longer kept within the care system. When Robert turned 18, he decided to escape the mistreatment he was experiencing at the hands of his father and ventured out on his own. With nowhere else to go, he found himself living on the streets. And much like many others, he eventually made his way to London. He descended into the realm of the forgotten and resorted to drugs as a means of escape. As his drug dependency grew, he spiralled out of control, and in order to sustain his habit, he became a rent boy. Subjected to the mistreatment at the hands of his clients, a profound animosity began to take root within him, towards those who exploited and harmed others. His circumstances deteriorated to such an extent that he made multiple attempts to take his own life and was subsequently hospitalised in psychiatric facilities in London. During his stay, he disclosed to the doctors that he experienced vivid visions of taking the lives of his parents, driven by relentless voices in his mind, fueling his profound animosity towards them. But he claimed he received little help. One night in 1974, Maudsley went with John Farrell, who showed the young Maudsley photos of other young children he had harmed. Maudsley's initial disgust transformed into a blind rage, leading him to commit a series of violent acts on Farrell. He garroted, stabbed, and smashed him over the head with a hammer. Maudsley, understanding the severity of his actions and the need for intervention, he made the decision to turn himself in, driven by the hope of receiving the crucial help he felt he so desperately needed. Due to Maudsley's mental health and history and background, along with the extenuating circumstances surrounding John Farrell's killing, he was found unfit for trial. In 1974, Maudsley was sentenced to life imprisonment for the crime of murder and subsequently transferred to Broadmoor Hospital, a high-security psychiatric facility known for housing some of Britain's most infamous offenders. During his 3-year stay, Maudsley largely kept to himself, but inwardly his turmoil grew as he became increasingly aware of the lack of adequate support and treatment available to him. While at Broadmoor, he and another patient, John Cheeseman, managed to grab David Francis, a convicted harmer of children. This individual was forced into a room where Maudsley and Cheeseman subsequently secured the entrance. A prolonged period of torment ensued, lasting a total of 9 hours. Following relentless physical assaults, Maudsley resorted to strangulation, resulting in the demise of the victim. In a display of audacity, Maudsley and Cheeseman then presented the lifeless body to the guards by positioning him in front of the door. It's been stated the two carried this out because Francis had attacked a friend of theirs who had turned down his advances in prison. Eventually they let the staff into the room where they found Francis dead. His skull cracked open like a boiled egg and a spoon stuck in his head. Allegedly, a part of his brain had gone, leaving the people to believe, falsely, that Maudsley had eaten it. When it went to trial, although he was still a patient at Broadmoor, this time he was deemed fit for trial. He was charged, convicted and sent, much to his annoyance, to Wakefield High Security Prison in West Yorkshire, a place that houses some of Britain's most notorious criminals, earning it the name the Monster Mansion. Before he arrived at the prison, the other inmates who had heard of his reputation gave him the nickname Spoon or Cannibal. Around a year into his sentence at Wakefield, Maudsley would go on to kill again. According to some inmates, Maudsley was intent on killing at least 7 people that day. They knew by the insane look in his eyes he was going to do something terrible. The first person he aimed for was wife-killer Salney Darwood, who had been teaching Maudsley French. He lured him into his cell, garroted and stabbed him before hiding his body under his bed. Maudsley then spent the rest of the morning trying to find other people to lure back, but no one would go with him. He eventually crept into a sleeping Bill Roberts' cell and repeatedly stabbed the 56-year-old Eshuel offender with a makeshift knife before smashing his head over and over again against the brick wall. After this, Maudsley calmly walked into the office and told the guard they would be too short for roll call tomorrow, and threw the knife on the desk. Once he was convicted of the last 2 murders, Maudsley was returned to Wakefield to serve his sentence in solitary confinement. Due to his solitary confinement and the danger to others, he was moved on a couple of occasions, spending some time in Woodhill and Parkhurst, but most of this time has been spent in Wakefield. In 1983, it was obvious to the prison authorities that Maudsley was too dangerous to be around other inmates, so a special cell was designed and built in the basement of the prison, and he has been in that cell ever since. It's apparently a bulletproof plexiglass box, 5 by 5 metres by 4.5 metres. The cell holds a concrete bed and his furniture is made from compressed cardboard. The bathroom furniture is securely bolted to the ground. Because the plexiglass cell resembles the cell that housed the fictional character Hannibal Lecter, and with the alleged fact that he ate part of a brain, Maudsley has been given the nickname Hannibal the Cannibal. He also has similar traits to the fictional character, as he has a high IQ and loves art, classical music and reading books. It's widely thought that the fictional character was based loosely around Maudsley. It's also been said that Maudsley had a disagreement with the criminal dubbed Britain's most violent prisoner Charles Bronson, now Salvador, who was also housed in the prison. It's rumoured Maudsley turned down a gift Salvador offered him, and Salvador raged. "He's an ungrateful bastard. I'd pray one day to bump into him at 300 miles an hour, and unlike him, I don't need a blade. Nobody rips my heart out or eats my brain, especially a effing nutcase like Bob Maudsley." Maudsley's confined to his cell 23 hours a day, only being allowed out for an hour a day. He has been dubbed Britain's most dangerous prisoner. Every time he leaves his cell to go to the exercise yard, a minimum of 6 prison officers escort him and watch his every move. Maudsley has said his lack of meaningful human contact has been incredibly difficult for him, referring to life in solitary confinement as one long period of unbroken depression. His family and friends have agreed in the past with Maudsley's comment that he feels the prison officials are not interested in helping him rehabilitate. Maudsley harbours the belief that he is being confined solely out of apprehension that he may cause harm to others, despite the perception that he is now harmless. It's been said that he's concerned his mental health issues are being ignored, and that the authorities aren't concerned about trying to determine if he committed these crimes because of a mental health issue or a depraved desire to hurt someone. Prison officials have stated that Maudsley's rehabilitation will continue. Maudsley did have psychological help for a 2-year period with an outside doctor, Dr. Bob Johnson.
What you're wanting to do, you're wanting to get into the room and feel the emotions of the child, but we realised there's certain hazards to actually doing that. But how do we still get in there?
How would you describe the progress that you're making?
The progress of today, I think you've come more into the room with me, even though at a distance.
Right.
I'm able to talk about things, a lot more things today than I was able to, say, 6 or 9 months ago. We see the thing, Bob, and well, I say I know in the past when I've tried to sort of face these things.
What's the thing?
You know, I'm just capable of doing anything, Bob, as the adult here.
Exactly.
And that's what I've got to be cautious of, you know.
Absolutely right. You're keeping the speed on these things, right? All I'm doing is saying this is where we're going to move in due course.
I think what I've been doing, I'm effectively putting in pieces.
Right.
But I have to make sure the pieces fit.
Well, they will eventually. That's right. Yes, you do. You have to piece them together. Yeah.
And I think that's come on fairly well.
I do. I think you're doing brilliant. I mean, you know.
When this ended, he had no one else to talk to about his life and turned to his now united family for support. They keep in touch with each other, and Maudsley writes often, always signing off with one of his former nicknames, Wolfie, one he acquired when he refused to shave or cut his hair. He has since, apparently, as far as we know to this date, shaved his long beard off and cut his hair. Maudsley has contended that all he has to look forward to is further mental breakdown and possibly ending his life. His supporters say the solitary confinement is a repeat of the abuse that led to his crimes. No other prisoner has been subjected to this level of confinement. In fact, he holds a world record for it. Over the years, he has pleaded to have some sort of relief from his constant boredom, sadness and depression, asking for a pet bird to keep him company and some other items, or to be able to play board games with prison officers. When appealing in 2000, he wrote, "What purpose is served by keeping me locked up 23 hours a day? Why even bother to feed me and give me 1 hour's exercise a day? Who actually am I a risk to? As a consequence of my current treatment and confinement, I feel that all I have to look forward to is indeed psychological breakdown and continued mental illness. Why can't I have a budgie instead of flies, cockroaches and spiders, which I currently have? I promise to love it and not eat it. If the prison services say no, then I ask for a simple cyanide capsule, which I shall willingly take, and the problem of Robert John Maudsley can easily and swiftly be resolved. As recently as December 2021, Maudsley appealed again for his freedom from solitary confinement to be allowed back into the general population. An insider said he was told no last month, but appealed against the decision and wanted to spend Christmas in the presence of other humans, but he's just been told no for the final time. Being alone for that long does something to you. He isn't okay, and they cannot take the risk of what he might do. They simply cannot take the risk. Now at the age of 70, Maudsley will spend the rest of his life in the bulletproof plexiglass cage in the basement of Wakefield's prison. Thank you for watching.